Good morning, everyone. So let's start with the fifth part of module 5. So till now we've seen
in
various
the various
protocols
protocols
which can be
which can
used
be
in
used in
optical networks. We've also looked at what basically the WDM network is, the asynchronous network, and the synchronous network, SONET and SDH, the OSI layer, the IP layer, and so on. So now let's look at the most important part in optical networks, which is known as the wavelength routing networks. So we already know from previous discussion that optical layer is based on wavelength dependent concepts, and this will lie just above the physical layer. The physical layer is the one that we can see, whereas the optical layer is the one that it is virtual, we cannot see. So the entire physical interconnected network will provide wavelength signal service, and this can be done using single hop or multi hop, and that has been shown in the diagram. So if you look at the diagram, there are three nodes, and signal is being transmitted over two wavelengths, lambda 1 and lambda 2. So lambda 1 is going from node 1 to node 2 on a physical infrastructure, lambda 2 is on a logical infrastructure, and then we just switch them into the logical and physical infrastructures. And the dotted line is basically showing the available wavelength, whereas the dark line is showing the wavelength which is in use. So what happens in diagram 1 is lambda 1 is between node 1 and node 2. And between node 2 to node 3, because of wavelength continuity constraint, we require the same wavelength lambda 1. However, this wavelength is available between node 2 and node 3, but it is in use between node 1 and node 2, and therefore the connection can be established. Now in diagram 2, you can see that lambda 2 is on the signal on lambda 2 is between node 1 and node 2. And also lambda 2 between node 2 and node 3 is in use. Therefore, this signal between node 1 and node 2 cannot be transmitted using lambda 2 between node 2 and node 3. Therefore, we need a wavelength converter at node 2 which can convert lambda 2 into lambda 1. Okay? So diagram B is basically showing us a node which is a wavelength convertible node. So the three nodes, as I just told you, are interconnected using two wavelength channels, lambda 1 and lambda 2. So that is the advantage that we get from the wavelength routing networks, that the nodes can be more, but the wavelengths to be used are lesser. So the solid line is connecting the nodes and it represents the available wavelength channel. And the dashed line will identify the channel which is in use. So now if node 1 is needed to be connected to node 3, then as you can see in diagram 1, no single wavelength is available, and to establish the light path. So when the light path cannot be established, the link using the single wavelength channel that needs to follow what is known as the wavelength continuity constraint. In this case, the signal will be blocked and we cannot proceed. Now to reduce the wavelength continuity constraint or get rid of it, we can use a wavelength converter. So you can see that incoming wavelength lambda 2 to lambda 1 is converted at node 2 because lambda 1 is available between node 2 and node 3. So that is an example of sharing the wavelength. Now this wavelength converter is basically required to convert from lambda 2 to what is known as a compliant wavelength lambda 1 at the output port of network node 2. So this node 2 is going to function as an intermediate node. So the newly set up paths, it uses two wavelength stages, that is two hops, to interconnect node 1 and 3. And this kind of a network will employ the wavelength conversion devices, and these are known as the wavelength convertible networks. So obviously the wavelength convertible networks could be preferred because you can use or share the wavelength. However, the cost of the network will increase because you are requiring wavelength converters, and these devices are expensive. So for the wavelength routing network, several network architectures can be employed. The three different architectures can be used, and these will employ the wavelength conversion function. So we are seeing in diagram A full wavelength conversion, and in this kind of a network, every link will utilize a wavelength converter which is fixed at every link. So all wavelength channels at the output port of the switch can convert to the compliant wavelength channel by appropriate wavelength converter. The example of this could be the topmost converter will change lambda 1 to lambda 2, and then this can be then connected to the multiplexer. However, there may not be a requirement for wavelength conversion at the local address. The disadvantage here is that every time you may not require a wavelength converter at every node, so this may increase the cost. Now, that's what is written in the first point. So it is not always required to provide conversion within every node. Therefore, it is effective to share the wavelength converter. And that kind of a network is known as a sparse. That kind of a network is known as a sparse wavelength convertible network. And this will employ a number of wavelength converters in, in regard to wavelength converter bank WCB, or this can be shared per link or per node, as you can see in diagram B and C. So arrangement of wavelength converters in wavelength converter bank is shown in diagram B. So this wavelength converter bank will service fiber links where only the required wavelength channels are switched using the wavelength converter bank. And you can see in diagram B that wavelength channel lambda 2 is converted to lambda 3. If you compare this to the next diagram, the two optical switches are required to construct a share per node wavelength convertible network, which is shown in diagram C. And here optical switch 2 switches the converted wavelength channels to their nodes. Therefore, the wavelength channel lambda 2 will be converted to wavelength channel lambda 3 using a shared wavelength converter bank, which is then switched through an optical switch 2 to provide connection to the multiplexer. So these are the three kinds of wavelength converters which we can use. So I'll just recap quickly that in A you have a full wavelength conversion where every link, every node will have its own wavelength converter, but it may not be required to have the wavelength converter at every node. And then you could have B and C where we are using wavelength converter bank or shared basis per link. And based on the bank or based on the link, you can use the wavelength converter. In the share per link, share basis per link structure, you need to have an optical switch 2, which will be able to convert the wavelength channel, for example, lambda 2 to lambda 3, as it is shown in the diagram C. So, more details about the wavelength routing networks. You can have a large number of channels on the links. However, this is going to increase the complexity if you use a static optical cross connect, which is able to switch the traffic only at wavelength level. The complexity will be more when you have multi-granular OXCs. That means the channels are very, very close to each other. And the traffic needs to be accessed at multiple levels. That means at every point you need to access the traffic. The complexity becomes more. And in those cases, such kind of wavelength routing networks may not be very good. So the multi-granular OXC as compared to the static OXC will not simply end or pass through a node. It may also be required to transport from one layer to the other layer using a multiplexer or the daemon. So there are techniques to reduce this complexity if more users or wavelength channels are grouped into one wave band, and this wave band can then be switched as a unique channel. We are combining many channels together, many wavelengths together, and we are calling them a wave band, and this entire wave band is then transmitted as a single channel. So the technique of waveband switching (WBS) can be also be used in over the optical networks, and this is a solution to lessen the complexity of wavelength routing networks, especially if you are using the optical networks as a core network. That means if you are trying to connect this network to global ends. So compared to a wavelength convertible network or node, the wavelength waveband switching mode, it will require only single input, single output, because we have already combined the wavelength channels into a waveband. So we have only one input, one output, and this will be independent of number of channels, because a whole number of channels have already been incorporated within the waveband. So this is the structure of a waveband switching network architecture, which employs a multi-granular OXC. So there are three switching layers which we can see, and this will be the wavelength cross-connecting, waveband cross-connecting, and fiber cross-connecting layers. So the fiber switching layer is at is the bottommost layer, and you have an input fiber and an output fiber. And this fiber switching layer will then connect to the waveband switching layer, where you have fiber to waveband demultiplexers and waveband to fiber multiplexers. And this waveband switching layer will then connect to the wavelength switching layer. It will have the waveband to wavelength demultiplexer, and you can also add and drop the channels depending on the application. So here are the individual wavelength channels, and the wavebands, they can be ended or terminated or switched transparently through the WXC or the BXC separately. The terminated waveband is demultiplexed into individual wavelength channels, which are then sent to the WXC layers as input. The output wavelength channels at the WXC layer can be multiplexed selectively into a waveband, and this is then sent to the BXC layer as an input. The output channels from the WXC layer and the output wavebands from BXC layer, this can be grouped together and transmitted along the optical output fiber pair. The fiber here may contain same wavelength channels and individual channels, and can also be incorporated in wavebands. Therefore, control plane or network control is important to determine the set of users which are grouped into a particular game. So, what is the advantage of this waveband switching? It supports a larger number of wavelength channels. It will also reduce the number of switches or ports within the optical network. So, if you consider the figure, if we have 10 individual fibers which can carry 1,000, let's say, wavelength channels, and each of them will have 100 in them. This can further be grouped into 5 bands, and then each will comprise of 20 wavelengths. So you can keep splitting these channels into lesser number of channels and group them, and then transmit them. And this will help us reduce the complexity. And when we have only a single wavelength channel to be added or dropped at some intermediate node, then instead of multiplexing, demultiplexing all 1,000 channels, you just have a band of 20 wavelength channels. In one of the 5 groups that needs to be changed or altered. Okay? So this is one of the more important fibers. One more important advantages. So if you have 10 fibers doing this entire job, the 9 of the fibers don't have to be, affected. Only one of the fibers gets affected. So the other advantage is if you have 5 bands, if you have 4 bands, let's say out of the 5, in the selected fiber, this will also not be required to undergo multiplex and demultiplex. So implementation of such a strategy will require wavelength assignment and routing algorithms for these networks, and these need to be efficient. So next comes the most important part in the wavelength routing networks, which is known as the routing and wavelength assignment (RWA). So we'll focus on the dense WDM network, which I've already told you is a WDM network where the channels are placed very close to each other. And in such networks, the light path will be established by reserving a particular wavelength on physical links between source and destination. So it is a two-stage search and select process related to routing as well as wavelength assignment. So routing basically is searching or selecting a suitable path between source and destination. And wavelength assignment is the searching or selecting or allocating an available wavelength for the connection. So this overall process is the RWA. There are various possible ways to determine the path selection and allocation of wavelengths, but they will fall basically into sequential or combinational selections. And these categories will address the core issue of wavelength continuity constraint. If you don't want to have the wavelength continuity constraint, then you can always use the wavelength converter, but that will increase the cost of the network. So the implementation of this RWA can be static or dynamic, and this will depend on the traffic which is coming. So if your traffic is static, that means if you are already aware of the traffic, then the RWA is static. If the traffic and its demands are not known, then that becomes a dynamic RWA. So the static RWA basically will be employed to provide set of semi-permanent connections, and these will be there for long periods of time because everything is static. The traffic pattern, as I told you, will be known in advance, and variation in the traffic will not be very frequent. So here, the RWA is basically referred to as virtual topology design problem because everything is pre-decided. Therefore, the network can also be designed previously. If you have dynamic RWA, then this will not exist for a longer time because the traffic is dynamic and the demands of this traffic can also vary from time to time. Therefore, the network connections cannot be established for a longer period of time. it is more complex to have an RWA for this kind of a network, because the bandwidth demands of the traffic is not known. So the network state will provide information about the physical path and wavelength assignment for all the active paths. The state evolves randomly, as I told you, and new light paths need to be admitted or gotten rid of from time to time. So every time a request is made, the algorithm has to be executed for both routing as well as wavelength assignment in real time, and it needs to be determined if it is feasible to accommodate the request. Then if so, then you perform the RWA, else you do not perform the RWA. The algorithms will also be used to decide the shortest path which is available if you are using a routing algorithm which is shortest path, and also to determine the assignment of wavelength depending on which wavelength assignment technique we are using. So in case of unavailability of the path on the same wavelength, then alternate routes can be found out to establish the light path. If none of these such routes are found, then we'll have to use wavelength conversion, else the demand is going to be blocked. So this is an example of wavelength routing and selection of path. So we are showing a 5-node network, and these are having fixed connections where node 1 is requested to establish the link with node 5. So there is no direct physical connection or path available. There are 4 possibilities to establish the link between nodes 1 and 5, depending on the available or assigned wavelength between every network. So what are these possibilities? You have a path through node 2 using a single hop. You have a path through nodes 4 and 2 comprising of 2 hops. Then through node 2 and 3 with 2 hops. And the longest possible route is stretching over 3 hops, that is 4, 2 and 3. So if you consider these 4 routes, the single hop remains the shortest path between 1 and 5. So depending upon whether the same wavelength is available between these nodes, the light path can be set up, or in the other case, wavelength conversion will be needed to be employed by changing it to a compliant wavelength. That means the wavelength which is available. The second shortest path will be selected if wavelength conversion can be facilitated. In case if you do not have wavelength channels available, then no link can be set up between the nodes, and this will lead to the blocking of the channel or the signal, and the probability of blocking is going to increase if many network nodes with a small number of wavelength channels and fewer links between them are having the same issues. So therefore this RWA algorithm will play an important role to determine blocking probability of a network, while it is also going to provide information about the availability of the path or link between the source and the destination. So what is the other advantage? In addition, it will also give an indication regarding the location and number of wavelength converters that may be required in an optical network. And to develop a particular or suitable RWA algorithm, we need to assign wavelengths within that network so that the aim can be satisfied, and the aim is to have the lowest blocking probability. So wavelength assignment in RWA, which depends on the network topology, is very, very crucial. And I've already mentioned in the previous lecture that we have various strategies for wavelength assignment. This could be the first fit assignment, the last fit assignment, the random fit assignment, and many other strategies. So this is an example of wavelength assignment for a ring network. And this ring network consists of 4 nodes. We have ABCD, and you can see that there exist 4 possibilities for establishing light path between the network nodes, and these can be either using the two inner and 2 outer half circles. So in diagram B, these circles have been elongated as lines to view this better. So we have 4 individual wavelengths, 1 wavelength per half circle. So that has been split into separate lines, and this may be required when wavelength reuse is introduced. 3 wavelengths are sufficient to provide similar connectivity. So now this is shown in figure B, and drawn by cutting the ring into straightened network wavelength connections. So this basically is going to split the network into 2 halves, We have the DTX and DRX separating the transmitter and the receiving elements. So the total number of light paths are 5, that is links, and the number of wavelengths which we are using is only 3, and that is indicated in figure B. So if you have wavelength lambda 1 which establishes 2 paths, one each between nodes A to D DTX, that is A to the last node D receiver, and C to DRX. The third light path connects node A to C via node B, and it utilizes wavelength lambda 2. And wavelength lambda 3 establishes the fourth light path between nodes B to D, DX via node B. Finally, same wavelength lambda 3 is also used to set up a fifth light path between nodes B to D, DRX via node C. So we can see that the number of nodes is higher, but the number of wavelengths which are used are lesser in quantity. So such RWA will determine the length of the path in terms of number of hops it has to travel to reach the destination. So this kind of pattern which we have just discussed is known as graph coloring, and this can be used to locate the shortest path in relation to different topology in our ring or a mesh. So the next part that we need to do is optical switching networks. I will just give you an overview of optical switching networks, and we'll go into the optical switching networks in details in the next lecture. So basically, an optical switch will represent the most dynamic element of an optical network, and traditionally this can switch data between different ports in the network. So with electronic switching, optical switching can be classified into two categories. This can be circuit or packet switching. We also have different other switches which we'll see later. So this optical switch will perform digital logic operations, allowing signals to switch from one state to the other. So the larger arrays of optical switches can switch signals from one port to the other. So these arrays of switches form circuit switching fabrics, and these are known as optical cross connects, which we have seen earlier. And this will incorporate the switching connections out like. So the router will route the data packets instead of providing circuit switched connectivity, and the data will be split into packets which are routed separately through the network, and these are reassembled at the receiving terminal to reconstitute the original message. So this kind of a process will provide for more efficient use of the available bandwidth. So both circuit and packet switching are used in high capacity networks. In circuit switched network, connection must be set up between transmitter and receiver before transfer of data. When the network resources remain dedicated, the circuit switching during entire transfer and the complete message follow the same path. And this kind of circuit switching is known as static. SONET SDH are an example of that. If the network resources can be reallocated without distribution, then that is referred to as time. So there are four parts which are mentioned in the syllabus: circuit switching, packet switching, and MPLS, and burst switching. And this will cover in the next lecture.